Welcome back. In recent years, the rise in book bans and challenges in U.S. public schools has sparked heated debates over censorship and the freedom to read. As Republican led states enact new laws limiting access to certain books, including those addressing LGBTQ issues and racial history, the impact on students, educators, and communities continues to grow. Joining us to tell us more is the executive board member at the American Library Association and chief librarian at Queens Public Library, Nick Buron. Nick, thank you so much for joining me.
Good day, Kibin. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Now, what do you think is driving the significant increase in book bans across the U.S. from 2023 to 2024?
Yeah, it is a worrying uh, activity that has been taking place not only since 2023, but quite honestly, for quite a while. It is something that in the last few years we have seen the rise of the rise of individuals, a very small minority of individuals taking it upon themselves, feeling empowered uh, by the animosity around them to attack libraries for holding the issues that we hold dear in libraries, which is, freedom of access, freedom of reading, freedom of choice to read what you and your family want to read. And quite honestly, some people don't like that.
Now, as you mentioned, this has been something that has been going on since before 2023, and it's tripling, especially over the past year. What do you think this trend signals about the state of freedom of expression in the United States?
Yeah. You know, we've always talked about, banning of books has been an issue in libraries, going all the way back decades and decades and decades. And in those times, really, the issue was, I don't like this one book. But right now, what we're seeing is smaller groups of individuals saying, coming with a piece of paper that's saying, I want these 100 books taken out of your library. And whether that be a school library, a public library, the difference is that many of these people are coming from outside the community to come into your community, to come into other people's community and tell them and their community what they should read. What is driving them is a need to control the narrative of expression. You asked about, what does this do with expression? The important thing that they're taking out of these libraries is an opportunity for all people, but especially young people, to be able to deal with issues that many authors are dealing with, very difficult issues, especially in youth, whether they be issues of depression, of grief, of death, of substance abuse, of suicide, and writing them in a way that's a narrative that a lot of young people can explore and be able to, find comfort in. And for some reason, it is that expression that other people from outside the community want to take away, and that not only is disturbing, but it actually has great consequences for many of our youth.
Now, with that, how do these book bans also affect, a young person, but specifically a student's access to diverse viewpoints and critical discussions that could be held in the classroom?
We always say at the library that people need to see themselves in the library. People need to see themselves in the literature. And when you don't, you're made to feel as the outsider. And so many of the books that are being banned, 44% of the books being banned have to do with people of color. 39% of the books being banned are LGBTQ plus books. So what's being taken out is not across the board. It's individuals, again, from outside that community that is coming into your community, that is coming into other people's community and telling them that, whether it's their history in nonfiction books or fiction books, saying that I don't want you represented. I want to try to erase you. Can you imagine the feeling that a young person would have to go in and being told that the books that are talking to me are somehow wrong, and that there must be therefore something wrong with me? It has a tremendous impact on how people feel about themselves. The best thing that libraries do is that they represent all the community and that are reflective in their collections. And then when we welcome everybody, which is what libraries do, then we empower everyone, their families, and their communities to be their best.
And I also want to expand on that and say that some of the books that are being banned are from authors that have been loved for a very long time, like James Baldwin. His "Go Tell It to the Mountain" is being targeted for a ban. Books like "Roots" by Alex Haley is being targeted. Can you explain what message this is also sending to America when we ban certain books like this?
And when you say certain books, you're absolutely correct. I mean, what do they all have in common is a part of history that some people don't want to see represented in America. And what that does is, like I said earlier, it's trying to erase, you know, people's people's history. Um, the best thing that we can, history is history. It's facts. But when we try to select the facts that we want people to learn, then we are erasing the people that are no longer heard from. You're right, like Bluest Eyes, um, Slaughterhouse Five, Forever. Stephen King books. We're talking about other people coming into your community and saying that I want to make decisions for you. This is too sensitive for you. This is something that I don't want you to learn about. This is embarrassing to U.S. history. But history is history. And the best thing that we can do is address true facts. But when other people try to select those facts, they are trying to create the narrative for the future. So by telling you what books you should read now, they're telling you how I want you to think in the future.
Now, Iowa and Florida have passed laws banning materials about sexual orientation, gender identity, and sexual conduct. How do you view the legal challenges these laws are facing?
So, when we hear words like that, what is that? That in and of itself is a fuzzy, right? It's like sexual orientation, sexual content. It's so broad, and that is done intentionally to be so broad that the people that are, the laws are created like that in those communities, in those states. And then when it comes down to the community basis, it's maybe one person that's making a decision that this is, this is the sexual content I don't want you to know. This is the sexual orientation I don't want you to know. And so while the law is broad, how it's applied is very subjective in these communities. And that's the thing that, we're allowing communities, whether it's in Florida, whether it's in Iowa, we're letting small groups of people. And this is it. This is what one of the points I really want to get across is that this is being enacted. These book bans are being enacted by a small group of vocal minority of people who are implementing this for the large majority of people that do not believe on both spectrums. On the full spectrum, political spectrum, most people do not believe that books should be banned wholesale. And so when a vocal minority comes in to say that this is what it should be, and then a very small group of people, maybe one, maybe two people, maybe it's a school board of 5 people that only 3 people believe that, then they're interpreting the law to their version of what they deem to be inappropriate. And that is very dangerous when a few people are bringing this list and a few people are making the decisions for thousands and thousands of young people that need these materials in order to have a positive, view and a correct view of what is going on in the world.
Now, can you explain the concept of soft censorship and how it's impacting library and public spaces?
Yeah, and this is really, to me, when we talk about banning books, it makes national attention. When we talk about challenges, it doesn't sound as severe as actually burning, but this is really the thing that is very dangerous as well, especially in communities that don't have traditional banning of books. Now, we happen to live in a city that is very welcoming of other people's points of view. We live around people that look different than us, that celebrate different than us, that love different than us, that are coming from different places in the world. And that allows us in this city to, I think, be more accommodating to that someone's going to read something different than I read, and I'm not going to take that away from them. However, we experience schools, public libraries here, other parts of the country, where someone might come in and might yell at the children's librarian in a public library saying, you shouldn't have this book. They're not saying get rid of it. They're not making a formal complaint. But what they're doing is they're putting pressure at that moment on that librarian. And if it's, a children's librarian, they might be in that room by themselves. Very intimidating to have someone yell at them. It might be a school librarian who's the only librarian in that school. And while it doesn't have impact that day, it very well might have impact when they go to make their choices for what kind of books they're going to buy in the future. And then they think, listen, I think that these books should be in the library, but why am I going to do this to myself? Why am I going to take the chance to have to defend every single book that this one person or this person and their friends are going to come in, and so that book doesn't get purchased? And that is the quiet way that some professionals, whether they want to or not, we want to keep our staff safe. And that is our goal. And people want to be safe. And if they feel like if I buy this book, that it's going to come back at me in the form of someone yelling at me, why should I do that to myself and to my school or my library? And so that book is never purchased. Sometimes people come in and they see a book that they don't like, and they're not going to yell and scream about it. They're not going to make a formal complaint to their library. They're going to take that book, and they're either going to try to get out of the library and throw it away, throw it in the garbage. I have seen books that are hidden behind other books on a shelf so that other people can't find them. And so there are little ways that this is done. And, knowing that, knowing what librarians face, the best way to combat this soft censorship, this feeling that the staff doesn't feel safe because someone's yelling at them, is to make the staff, our staff in schools, feel supported, that they can stand up to this, so that when they do have somebody who is challenging them but doesn't want to make a formal complaint to the institution, they feel that they have strong grounds and they have talking points that they could defend, the freedom to read for everybody.
And I kind of want to expand on that similarly. What role do publishers, teachers, students, and parents play in resisting book bans, and how can they advocate for the freedom to read?
So one of the things that we all can do is know the environment that's out there. And I think that is really getting out across the country, across our city. People know there are people out there that want to take your right to read freely away from you and your family. And the best thing to do is to be able to stand up when you see that. Now, like I said, in our community, we don't have as many challenges as you might think. However, they are there. But there are people dealing with these challenges in other places, and you can go find them and support them. So, for your family, I recommend that people have an open discussion in their home about, what are you reading? Some of our, the families that come in, are taking books out, letting their kids read because they're having discussion with them. They're having a trust with them that their kids can come in, take what they want, and have a relationship with them to discuss this. I think that families could make decisions among themselves about what their kids can and might not be appropriate to read. And that is for their family to make. When we're talking about, banning, book banning, we're talking about people taking that right away from other people. And so being prepared, though, for when that day does come, and it might come at any neighborhood, anybody's school, where someone is trying to take away that right to read freely. When that happens, people are prepared with other parents to stand up at their school board meetings, that come to the library to support the library, to say, this is unacceptable and this is not what this country is all about.
Now, further kind of going on to that point, what can be done to prevent book bans from being used as a political tool that affects educational content and intellectual freedom? And I say that because I think just as like a little girl learning to read, I never thought, a book, although there could be political content within the book, that just the book simply existing can become political. So what can we do to kind of step away from that?
That's an interesting point that the book itself, even existing, is political. This is one of the things that, is relatively new. The thing is, what I think that, by the library being able to, um, to purchase all material that people want in the community is in itself an act of nonpartisanship. We're bringing in everything. And so the library is not being political by buying these materials. The library is actually being nonpartisan by bringing in all points of view. And so as, we get the message out that, library is nonpartisan, that people can come here and get anything, that they're looking for, that the decisions that they make, when they come in, you can read about all sorts of points of view. And, to be able to provide that to communities is, really important. I'm not sure I answered your question very well.
No, no, that's okay. Definitely, I definitely wanted to kind of put that out there. Just having this conversation alone is so eye-opening because I remember kind of hearing like little, buzzing words about, book bans and automatically thinking it's the worst book possibly known to man. And then seeing an author like James Baldwin, it's like, oh, there's something deeper there. And I'm glad that we're exploring it.
And even, even the term, saying book bans and book banning, I'll be honest with you, we're taking the language of people that want to ban these books and using their language. When, it might be better to, just to flip it a little bit and say, listen, reading freely, the freedom to read is what we are advocating. We're not we are definitely advocating. We are, we unite against book bans for sure. And that is, one of the best websites that anyone can go to, unite against book bans. That being said, what we're really advocating for in this United States here is the freedom to read. One of the things that we did on the Freedom to Read Day of Action, which took place in October, is we at the Queens Public Library had an event where we actually had people from other places in the world, people who have immigrated here to the United States. And what they did on that day is they didn't read banned books from the United States. They read banned books that were banned in the countries where they were coming from. And so people have come here to the United States because they are fleeing places where books that they wanted to read were being banned, that by reading them here, by us giving them access to them at the Queens Public Library, they were able to read books that they otherwise were not able to access in their home country, because they came here because they believe that America is the place where they can find freedom. And one of those freedoms is the freedom to read.
Well, Nick, with that, I want to thank you so much for joining us, having this very important discussion to talk about the freedom, just having the freedom to read. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a great opportunity.
We have to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.